Growing cannabis doesn't have to be hard, but there are some common mistakes that can trip you up, especially if you're a new grower. I'm gonna help you avoid them. But before we get into all that, today's video is brought to you by Real Grow Lab. If you want to connect with the best growers from all over the world, get tips and tricks on how to grow the dankest plants possible, and not have to worry about the censorship we get from YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, go check out realgrowlab.com. Get all kinds of great grow talk Q&A. Plus, see all the stuff YouTube won't let me show you in these videos. Sign up and join our growing community over at realgrowlab.com. Or download the app at the Apple or Android App Store. Now let's get back to today's video. All right, Hi C, let's get into this one. I think we can really help some new growers with this one.
Yeah, and for this video, let's make sure we're addressing the common mistakes that new growers make.
Sure, new growers. Hey, I've seen a lot of growers make these mistakes. It's very easy to forget the fundamentals.
Okay, so yeah, I guess if you're a new grower, this will be great for you. If you're an expert grower, this might be a good brush-up lesson.
Yeah, the experts know. We'll say a good intermediate grower.
Okay, cool. So let's start off with, this was the biggest mistake that I made. And I have heard a lot of people make it's easy to get this one wrong.
Sure. Overwatering.
Yep.
Overwatering is just, what do we know about plants? They need water, right? Yep. They need nutrients also, but they need water. So when a plant looks lousy, what do? We give it some more water. So
well, I think we're kind of trained because every time it rains, everything pops up and looks great.
Sure.
So when our plants start to look slumpy, do what it does when it rains.
Yes, and just like everything, just like we need water. You ever seen like people do the 1 gallon water challenge and they get really sick? It messes up your electrolytes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Plants need water in the right proportion. Plants have a bunch of, I'm a bacteria beneficials guy. They've got a bunch of life in that soil, and that life is aerobic. It needs air to breathe and to work. When you drown it with water, you're drowning them. They can't do their work. They're just like us. They need the right amount of water, the right amount of air, the right temperature. All that matters a ton. So
do they breathe at the root zone then?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's aerobic bacteria. Aerobic means with air. So so if you're drowning them, they're just not able to move.
Okay. And since drowning them is such a common problem.
Sure.
If I'm drowning my plants, what are some ways that I can tell just by looking at them?
They will look like something that's drowning. They will look horrible. When you look at a plant, I see it over on Real Grow Lab all the time. People will be like, what's wrong with this plant? I've just given it another dose of nutrient or whatever, but you're giving it what it needs nutritionally, but it's drowning, and you'll see the leaves will be folding over, the growth will slow and stop, and the most important thing is if you lift up your container, you'll feel that it's not drinking, that it's not taking any of that water out of the soil and transpiring it into the air.
Okay, so normally when it's getting the right amount of water, it's sucking that water up.
Yep.
But when it gets too much water, what happens to the roots when it gets too much water?
The roots have to breathe. The roots, there's aerobic activity going on. There's aerobic microbes that are covering those roots and are all in the soil. And aerobic means with air. So as soon as there's not enough air, actually it goes anaerobic, which means without air, and that's where the decomposing fungi and bacteria come in. You don't want that. You want to keep these aerobic bacteria to have a symbiosis to the plant and the roots.
I think of like a paper towel. It can absorb a certain amount of water, but once you put too much water, it starts breaking apart and stops doing its job.
You need bounty, bro.
Real quick question, just a tip on this one.
Yeah.
What's your preferred medium for making it easy to water and keep that air to water ratio?
I prefer cocoa. Cocoa core is literally when they peel the coconuts off to get the coconut water or the nut. It is the husk of that coconut. If you've ever picked that up, sometimes you can see them on the beach or whatever. It's airy. It's super light. So it's got this organic material in there. It's got this fiber that can hold the plant root and grow plants, but it holds a whole bunch of air. So it's pretty neat.
Gotcha. And then last tip to make watering easy.
Yes.
You introduced me to sip buckets. Explain those.
Sip buckets, sub-irrigated planter. So what do we learn? First thing we learn is plants need water, right?
Uh-huh.
Second thing I learned was don't let your plants sit in water or they'll rot.
Right. Okay.
The roots will go anaerobic. It'll rot. Yeah, I thought about that for first 35 years of my life, or at least I just took that rule and I just didn't question it. Turns out I started learning. I Googled somebody, hempy buckets was the first time I learned about it. And they talked about just having a little up to 2 inches of water in the bottom of your container. And the idea was that the roots would suck up that water, which.
And it's like a 2-celled container. There's the container part that has the media, and then it has a little net pot that goes down and just absorbs a little bit of water in the second container.
That's the way I do it in my real buckets. There's all sorts of ways to do it, but the most important, the principle of it is that if you just leave a little bit of water, I think 2 inches is the maximum height of water, the surface area is enough to oxygenate to allow aerobic activity to happen in the root system. But it can't be deep. If it's just shallow, if it's a little puddle, it's like kind of simulating like maybe what a puddle of water would be in real life. But it works. And it's crazy. Those are sip buckets, sub-irrigated planters. You're irrigating from underneath. You're letting the cocoa core or the media act as a wick, and it wicks it up.
Nice.
Can I just say one more thing about overwatering?
Sure.
Lift your pot up. You can get really comfortable and understand how your plant is drinking by just lifting the pot up and understanding, hey, this is what the solo cup feels like when it's fully saturated. Man, I went back 3 days later and it still felt like that. Well, something's weird. Don't water it again.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's move on to the next one.
Yes.
Second most common mistake that new growers and sometimes experienced growers make.
Yes, it's poor light management. You know, not handling or not managing your light intensity and spectrum correctly.
I know that you had got some new lights a couple of months back and put them too close to the plants. And what happened?
Yeah, I burnt my plants. With the new lights, I turned them up a little bit too fast, too high, and I burnt my plants. And once you burn your plants, it takes a while for them to recover. It does.
Yeah. So playing around with different lights whenever you switch manufacturers, is there like kind of a testing period there?
Yeah, definitely. You can get a Photon app on your phone. You can get a PPFD meter. PPFD is the amount of photons, light raindrops raining down in a certain area, and there are good rules of thumb for it. So I would just kind of go along with that. And man, you want to turn them up just a tiny bit at a time. It turns out that lights can handle a whole bunch of intensity, but it just has to be done slowly, a little bit at a time. So a big thing is when you click back to flowering, you've gone from, say, you've got 18 hours of light in veg. Now you click back to 12 hours of light in flowering. You just lost 33% of your light.
Wait, before you continue with that, why do we switch our lights to less light per day?
Oh, sorry. Because we're simulating fall. For cannabis, 18 hours a day was simulating summer.
That's when they're growing the veg.
Big growth. And then when we go down to 12 hours a day of light, 12 hours of day darkness, we're simulating fall or winter, and that stimulates flowering.
Okay. And then you were saying when you cut off 30% of the light.
33 and a third, man.
Yeah, okay.
When you cut off, seriously, you go from 18 hours a day of light to 12 hours a day of light. You're losing a third of the intensity of light, and you're trying to grow these big, giant buds. We're going to do that by cutting it a third? We got to raise it up. So that's when you start slowly dialing up the intensity of your lights, and you got to do it 33% just to get to where you were.
Right, but you got to do it slowly though, right? You said if you did it too fast, you might run into the thing where the lights burn your plant.
One more thing about light is there is a maximum amount of light that your plants can absorb. It's called DLI, or the daily lighting integral. So you want to make sure you want to give your plants plenty of light, enough for dense, compact, just really strong growth, but not so much that you're just throwing away money.
Yeah, you start to get that diminishing returns.
No returns whatsoever. Once you hit your DLI, it's literally just those light photons are just bouncing off. They can't be absorbed anymore, and they're just 100% wasted after that.
Okay, let's move on to the third one. And this one was a bit more scientific. It's not as sexy as lights, but it's just as important.
Sure. pH, ignoring pH levels. And you might, if you've heard the other episodes that I've done, I don't worry about pH so much, but it is important. So let's get into the facts right away. Yeah, pH is a scale from, what is it, like from 1 to 9, 1 being like the most powerful acid. You know, you get up high there, you're talking like baking soda and bases like that. Those are the two extremes. Nutrients and plant nutrients can only be absorbed in a real specific pH range. And it ranges from, I don't know, in the low 5s to right into the high 7s. And there's different nutrients can be absorbed at different pH ranges. So right at about mid 5.5, 5.8 into the 6s, most of those nutrients can be absorbed into that range. So you have to keep your you have to keep your soil, the rhizosphere where the soil meets the plant, at that specific pH range so those nutrients can be absorbed. It used to be a big pain in the butt.
So if it goes above like 7, the plant shuts down and says, I'm not uptaking nutrients.
Yeah, it can't uptake specific nutrients. It might be able to take up one nutrient while not uptaking the other. So you just get this imbalance.
But when it's in that perfect zone between 5.5, 6.5, that's where it's able to absorb the most amount of
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
And you mentioned, I know that people pH their water, they pH their soil. You've found a simple way to make sure that at the rhizosphere, at that root zone, it's keeping that pH level where you need it.
I found a hack, bro.
Okay, what is it?
The hack is microbes. When we're talking about plant roots being able to absorb nutrients at a specific pH, that is because the plant root is very sensitive. The plant root is very pH sensitive. When we cover that plant root with microbes, I'm going to give a plug to Recharge here, and I won't even say shameless plug because dang, does this stuff help a bunch, or do microbes in general help, whether it's compost, wherever you're getting them from. But those microbes are able to absorb nutrients at a much wider pH range. Microbes want to stay alive. They need the plant to make sugars, so they want to ingratiate themselves there. So them being able to grab nutrients from the soil, make them plant available, adjust the pH, make them plant available and deliver them to the plant root, it's huge. And it's a amazing service that the microbes do for the plant.
And those microbes, they can get in there and they can detect, oh, the pH is a little bit too high, I'm going to bring the pH down a little bit, or vice versa.
Yes, they can regulate their own pH.
Perfect. So adding some microbes into your mix helps it make sure that your pH levels at the root zone stay where they need to be to get those maximum nutrients.
It was the difference between me having a pH pen and then a doser, which was a monitor controller that constantly monitored my pH in my hydroponic system, and then add a little bit of pH up with a tiny pump. It looked like something you'd see in a hospital.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, peristaltic pump. It was so complicated. Now, once a week, I dump Recharge on there. I put a bunch of soil microbes on there. I reinvigorate it, repopulate it every week. And the plants just aren't pH sensitive anymore. The don't forget, I'm not pouring, pH 2 or 3 in there. It's it's close. It's within a point or so. But man, do the microbes really take care of it for me? It's neat.
Nice. Okay, so just a real quick recap. Overwatering is the big one.
Yep.
Not knowing how to adjust your lights properly is the second one. And then the third one is making sure that your pH range at your root zone is where it needs to be to get those plants the nutrients they need.
I think those are big deals. If you can master, or just not master, just understand those 3 things, you'd be a better grower. But that's just my 2 cents on the matter. What about you? What mistakes did you make when you first started growing cannabis? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, please hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, share it with another grower you know, and check out the other couple videos YouTube's recommended. I hope you will dig them.